Worked with and how he came to notoriety. Could you just give us a background, perhaps?
Okay, well, when they started spying on everybody in the United States, that was the biggest crime that I ever encountered in my life, and I was going to oppose that with everything I had. That happened in October of 2001. The second week in October of 2001. Because the programs I've been developing were dealing with mass data, and we had filters up front so that nobody's data got collected unless they were relevant targets, and we knew it was a focused attack on data to pull out data about people who were doing bad things like terrorists and dope smugglers and things like that. People who were targets, known targets, and with probable cause. And or anybody associated with them or in near proximity of a social network with them, or other kinds of rules we were preparing to implement, like if you used a cell phone in Afghanistan or in the mountains of Afghanistan or in Inmarsat or things like that, satellite phones in that area, we are going to look at you because of a high probability you're a terrorist, okay? Or the similar kind of thing, if you're in the jungle of Colombia and you're using a satellite phone or cell phone and we pick you up, we're going to look at you because it's a likelihood that you're either a member of the FARC or a dope dealer. So those were reasons to do, and that I called a professional disciplined approach, using rules and knowledge about the targets to pull out of the massive amounts of data. And what that did was that made content a manageable problem for the analysts. It was even a problem in the 90s because even when they couldn't do this bulk acquisition, they still had too much data. Their analysts were failing because they couldn't get through that data. And so that was the reason we did that design, that focused professional attack on the network to make content a manageable problem so they can succeed in solving problems and being able to find terrorist threats before they occur, so we can actually stop them and succeed, much like Anonymous did in Texas, okay? And that was, but we had to do, what we had to do was be able to look into everything flowing through the network. That meant we had to be able to look at fiber optic rates and see everything in it, and be able to look at least at the metadata. Because if you had to start to look at the data itself, you were doomed to failure because there was just too much of it. You couldn't get through it. You couldn't keep up with the fiber rates. But if you looked at the metadata, you could see the relationships and look at the relationships and use that as the rule to pull out data, and that's how we did it. But in the end, what they decided to do was say, I want everything, so I'm cutting, I can see everything, so now I can capture it too, because we gave them that capability too. We shouldn't have done that, but we did. And so they turned off that filter up front and took in everything. And then they also got rid of all the protections, because under the rules that we were guiding, we were trying to conform to the Fourth Amendment. If anybody that came in was a U.S. citizen, we would encrypt all their attributes. In other words, if they were talking to a bad guy, we would encrypt their attributes until we could show probable cause, and when we could show probable cause, then we could target them. That's according to the Fourth Amendment and according to the FISA law too. So we were trying to conform to all that. Instead, what they did was remove all those protections, not concealing anybody's identity, and so now they were just violating everything. So that started to happen in the second week of October of 2001. And they had to use the programs we put together to do that because none of the other programs they had anywhere in NSA actually dealt with massive amounts of data like ours did. So I'm kind of semi-responsible for giving them the capability to do what they're doing today. So that's why I'm fighting for it. I have been since 2001, and when it started to come out, first thing I did was go to the House Intelligence Committee, the people I knew there. They're supposed to do the oversight of NSA and stop. They were formed as a committee, so was the Senate, and the FISA court was formed to prevent the intelligence community from spying on U.S. citizens. That came out of the church committees investigations. And by the way, one of the main people they were spying on in the church committee during that church committee period was Senator Church. I mean, because NSA and the Minaret program was watching them, so was the FBI and the COINTEL and CIA and Chaos. They were watching him to try to figure out what he was planning to do in his investigation. Well, they're still doing the same thing today, but according to Russ Tice, he's seen the transcripts of people from the FISA court, people from the Joint Chiefs of Staff, people from the Supreme Court, judges, generals, on the anybody 3-star general and above, I think they were watching. So, and all House and Senate members. So they were doing transcripts and still are, much like a minaret program, or under J. Edgar Hoover, right? We had that kind of activity going on with the FBI. So it's the same thing. I mean, just it's on a grander scale. Instead of doing a few thousand people, we're doing everybody. So that program was one we were inventing then, and when they started using it against everybody, we had to leave, and we went to the different committees. We filed complaints even with the Department of Justice Inspector General, and went through various other members of Congress, and that was over a period of years. And then in 2007, they decided that we'd made too much of a nuisance of ourselves, and we needed to be stepped on. So they sent groups of 12 FBI agents to each of our homes simultaneously. Diane Rourke lived on the west coast in Oregon, so she got raided at 6 o'clock in the morning, and Kirk Wiebe, I, and Ed Lewis and I live on the east coast, so we got raided at 9 o'clock in the morning. That's so we were simultaneously, nobody could call each other. Said, I'm getting raided, you can't alert your friends, okay? So that's the way they did that. So they came busting into my house with guns drawn.
Oh my God.
So they were pointing guns at my son, pushed him out of the way, and then came upstairs to where my wife was getting dressed. They pointed guns at her, and they came into the bathroom where I was getting out of the shower and pointed a gun at me. So, of course, I didn't understand why they were doing it, but because I'd been cooperating with them for about 3 months, they were asking me all kinds of questions. I was telling them everything I knew about who was involved in Thin Thread, because they were looking at the New York Times. The principal was looking at the New York Times expose of the warrantless wiretapping program, 16 December of 2005, I believe that was. That was Jim Risen, whom I know now too, and Eric Lichtblau, whom I also know. So they did their Pulitzer Prize-winning article, I think it was. So. And they used that as a basis to raid us. But it was really the DODIG complaint that they were doing retribution against us. They also were afraid that we would go to the Senate Judiciary Committee, where Attorney General Gonzalez had just testified and not told the whole truth about the spying programs. They were afraid we were going to do that, because we'd go to them and tell them, because we had a record, kind of a consistent record of going to committees and congressional people and telling them the truth, and they didn't want that out. So they wanted to threaten us with, the FBI and guns and stuff like that. Well, to me anyway. And I guess the point was that I started getting mad at them when they were there. Okay, because I knew why they were there. I mean, it wasn't too hard to figure out. These people were transparent. Okay. The only one who was cleared for all these programs was the special agent in charge. Paul Marek was his name, and he was the only one who was cleared for the Stellar Wind program. Which I called. I did my test when I first started meeting you and Joyce. They called me in to talk to me about this people who knew about this program, and I said, this was my test of them. That's, were they cleared or not for this program? It was a test that I had to have, and I had to know that they were cleared. They said they were, but that didn't mean anything. Okay. So when they said, do you know anybody who knows about this program and all that stuff? And I said, oh, you mean cosmic fart? And I waited for the reaction. It took about 3 seconds or 4 seconds for this FBI agent to react. Well, then I knew he was cleared, okay, because the Stellar Wind program I referred to as cosmic fart. But he understood that. So that was my test of him, okay. So, but I mean, I had been cooperating for 3 months with them before this started, and then after the raid, when they were there, I said, so you guys were sent here by somebody outside the FBI. And by the physical reaction of all the agents, except of course the guy in charge, I could tell that I hit it right on the head. Because it's like you watch people and see their reactions. It's like you caught the kids with their hand in the cookie jar, right? That's the kind of reaction you got from them. So I knew I hit it right on the head. And then they started telling me things like, questioning me, saying, tell me something that will implicate someone in a crime. Okay, so that means I'm supposed to determine what the crime was, right?
You shouldn't be here as well.
That's right. Well, I got back at them. I'll finish this stuff. So after they said that, I said, well, I didn't really know anybody or anything that would implicate anybody in a crime. They said, I think you're lying. Well, that was the wrong thing to say to me, okay? When they said to that, okay, I know what the crime is. George Bush, Dick Cheney, Hayden Tennant went through this conspiracy to subvert the entire Constitution. Here's how they did it. And went through the Stellar Wing program and what it did, what information they were taking in from what companies and how they operated, manipulated, and displayed it. And all the other agents in this that were sitting around there listening weren't cleared for this program. Okay, so they weren't cleared. I knew, see, I'm causing him a problem. All this guy could do who was cleared is look at the floor while I was doing this. Okay, that's the only thing he could do. I'm reporting a crime to him, okay? They're under obligation to research and investigate that crime. But they were here to cover it up. That was the point that they were doing. So that's how I was telling the other agents what was happening and why they were there. Well, you know, of course, the head agent can't let them disperse. I mean, if they go away and start talking about that, hey, you know what I heard today, you know, you can't have them doing that. So he had to have a huddle outside with the cars. They couldn't go. He had to pull them all together and say, now you guys can't talk about anything you just heard. I know what he said. That's what he had to say. And then he said, you have to come see me tomorrow morning because you have to get cleared for a program. Once you're cleared for the program, you can't talk about it. So I informed them of what the program was, and they weren't cleared, so now they have to be cleared. So now they can't talk about it. So that was the problem I created for them. And from there, after that, after the raid, they, over the period of a couple of years, through 2009, about 2.5 to almost 3 years, they 3 times attempted to indict us, all of us, the ones who were raided, on false charges. Well, each time I was catching them, but I had exculpatory data, and each time they thought they had it, right? But we had friends, and we shared things, so they have it too. So that when they took it and left with it, we asked for it back, and we got it back from our friends. So that's the best thing about sharing. You can never, it's like backup, or it's a backup system for your data. So then they did that, and then the final time was in 2009, late 2009. They tried to indict us on a conspiracy charge. They said we met at that Turk Valley Club. Now what we were doing there was trying to formulate or put together a group of a corporation to attack Medicare and Medicaid fraud. You know, they actually give 30% finder's fee on anything you save the government. And since they have a $60 billion loss every year, we thought we could make up to $20 billion a year. Save the government money and save us money, right? So, you know, the potential was there. Anyway, and we had good ideas on how to do that. Not the stuff that they were doing, duplicate billing. Now, we were actually going to pick out fraud. So, when they said that, you know, they were going to charge, our lawyer told us they were going to charge us on that and indict us and get the conspiracy charge on us. Why? We started wondering how can they do that? I mean, they've got all this data about us. They knew what we were doing there. This is a false charge, of course. They were trumping up and fabricating evidence to put us in jail. That's what they did to Tom Drake. That's what they did to us. So, but I had the data because I got it back from the friends. We had other people there who weren't involved in NSA at all. We were going to draw them into this program too, and of course we shared everything with them. So that when the NSA or what the FBI took all the data away from us, thinking we didn't have any exculpatory data, we called them up, say, give us back the data, will you? And then we got it back. So then that was all the evidence of malicious prosecution. Okay, so I said, how can I get this information across to the DOJ lawyers that I'm going to charge them with this when we go to court under their indictment? Well, I thought for a minute, I said, okay, Tom Drake's phone is tapped, I know, by the FBI. So I'm going to call Tom. I'm going to read across to him all the evidence I've accumulated on malicious prosecution of the DOJ lawyers. And so I did that, and I said, Tom, at the end of it, I said, Tom, tell your lawyer that we intend to indict them for malicious prosecution when they take us to court with this charge of conspiracy. And I said, and then it just hung up. Well, then a month later, January, I think the 12th it was of 2010, we got letters of immunity from the DOJ. So that went away rather quickly, and our lawyer never knew what happened because I never told him what I did. Because I said, you know, why should I tell my lawyer? You know, he doesn't know anything anyway. So, so anyhow, that was how he got rid of it. And from then on, in 2011, I just thought, well, gee, with all this, that was really the final thing for me. I mean, here's my own government, Department of Justice, trying to fabricate and frame us as a group. I also tried to frame Tom Drake. I mean, they took papers from his home that were marked clearly unclassified, drew a line through it, and obviously did it, I mean, it's on the court record, and they stamped it secret or top secret, said, and then charged him with having classified data. Well, that's a felony. That's fabricating evidence to convict people. That's a felony. Why aren't these people in jail? You know, when Dick Cheney said we're going to go to the dark side, he really meant it, and we really did. Okay, so that's my story. Now I just can't stop and let this continue without saying what I had to say about it. I mean, this is just terrible. I mean, we're losing our government here.
Thank you.
Yeah.